dairy farm in upstate New York on the Vermont border. So we ate they were fresh foods, they were from our garden. At one time, I thought we were pretty self sufficient, except for sugar and salt and flour. So, what my mother would do, she would can fruits. And again, we didn't have peaches really up in that area. We had pears. So, she would can pears. My aunt had the little wild Concord grapes, so she made grape juice, grape jam, and we had them in season. And then, of course, apples. We had access to a lot of apples, and we made she would even can apples that we could use in the winter or for pies. But everything was really fresh. We would go, as a little bit older kid, we would walk to the barn, my brothers or sisters and I, and get milk out of the milk tank. Of course, it was raw milk. It wasn't it wasn't processed milk. The foods my mother made, I remember her making pineapple upside down cake, and that was for like special events, and we loved that. It seemed like we had Spanish rice a lot. It was some concoction they made with rice and tomato, and I don't know if there was some ground beef in it. We had meat from our dairy farm. Those were some of the things I liked, and fresh fruits from strawberries when they were in season. Oh, okay, yes, growing up on the Vermont border, of course, we had maple syrup fairly regularly. I can remember my mother, for a special treat, we made something called maple syrup on snow. It was sort of like a candy. When it was a nice fresh snowfall, we would she had to make like a syrup out of it to get a string, when you boil it. And then we would go out and you could roll it on snow and it would roll right around the fork, and it was almost like a taffy that you ate, because it's 40 gallons of sap makes 1 gallon of syrup, so you really have to boil it constantly and get the moisture out, so it took the wallpaper off the walls. That's why they have these big outside evaporator houses, sugar houses they call them. Now I really love it, thinking back of how good it tastes.
I grew up in the center of North Dakota, Goodrich, and it was a town of about 250 people. We lived on a farm 5 miles out. We'd milk by hand, and we had a little room right there in the barn that was called the milk house, is what we called it. We'd sell the cream. We'd use the cream. We wouldn't separate all the milk, of course, because we'd have to have some for drinking. Take that into the house, and we'd feed I had quite a few cats for pets, and so we'd make sure they got some good whole milk. But the skim milk, we didn't drink that. That went to the pigs. We did our own butchering. They would bring it in after it was halved or whatever, and bring it into the house, and we'd clear off the big wooden dining room table, and that's where we did our work. And I'd pull the carrot, and I'd rub it off on my jeans, and I'd eat it right out there. I'd pull an onion, and I'd eat it right out there. And I could, that was okay to throw the tops there, because they could go back in the soil, there wasn't anything wrong with that. At one time, Mom got some geese. I believe she got the eggs and had them hatched by a chicken, and just so that we could have geese to eat. My brothers went out and would shoot duck, and so we had wild duck. I remember that. The sweets weren't real common. I suppose cake was our most common pie, if fruit pies in season again. So cake was more common. Pies would be a special. We would have our holiday dinners at Grandma Hanson's. That was Mom's mother, and in town. And so there was always lutefisk. I always ended up having to serve the stupid lutefisk, and I could not stand the smell of it, and that bothered me enough where I didn't eat very much after that. We grew plums. We had plums, and we used to go out on the prairie and pick June berries, but you'd have to have so many of them. Lots of potlucks. Mom was a teacher in the country school, and we'd have potlucks at school. The school was kind of a focal point. We had a big yard, and we had lots and lots of picnics there. We'd have neighborhood picnics, we'd have relative picnics. But I remember getting one bag after the church Christmas program, and Santa came to the school Christmas program. And so we'd get two bags, depending on what they could get. It would either be an apple or an orange, one or the other. And you get this bag, this brown paper bag, and there were peanuts in the shell, and an apple or an orange, one or the other, and this ribbon candy. It was hard candy, and it was striped, and it was like so. Oh, those Christmas bags were just awesome. Yeah, they were.